The captive life. She was not born free. From the very first day she could remember, her life was not her own. Chains of duty and fear wrapped around her like an invisible prison. She was a personal slave, owned by powerful masters who saw her, not as a living being but as an object to command. Her world was filled with silence and orders. She was trained to obey without question, to bow her head and never look into the eyes of her owners. A mistake meant punishment. A late step meant pain. And yet, she learned to survive. Every morning, before the twin suns rose above the alien city, she was already awake. She cleaned, she served food, she carried heavy loads. The masters spoke loudly, but to her they only gave commands. She had no name in their eyes, only a number, only property. But deep inside she carried something they could not chain. A small spark. A question she never dared to speak aloud. Is this all my life will ever be? The city outside was huge, full of tall metal towers that touched the sky. Ships flew above like silver birds. Traders shouted in alien tongues. But for her, this world was not exciting. It was a cage with no exit. Other slaves worked around her. Some were older, broken, their eyes empty. Others were young, still holding on, to silent tears. She watched them, and she wondered if her fate would be the same. Would her spirit also fade away, leaving only a hollow body that moved when ordered? Her masters didn't care. To them, she was just useful hands and quiet feet. When guests visited, she was forced to kneel at the corner of the hall, silent and unseen. When the masters laughed, she was not allowed to smile. When they grew angry, she felt the strike before the words even ended. Time passed slowly, like a heavy chain dragging across stone. She counted days only by the pain in her body and the whispers of other slaves in the dark nights. Then, something strange began. Whispers spread through the slave quarters. A human had arrived in the city. At first she thought it was just another cruel master. She had seen many aliens before, some rich, some poor, some powerful, some cruel. But the whispers carried something different. They say he is not like the others, one slave muttered while scrubbing the floor. They say he freed a worker once, paid for him, then let him go, another whispered with disbelief. Impossible, someone answered, shaking their head. No master frees a slave, not in this city, not ever. The rumors should not have mattered to her. Yet for some reason, her heart beat a little faster when she heard them. A human who frees slaves. Could such a thing be true? That evening, when she served her masters in the grand hall, she saw him for the first time. He stood tall, his figure strong but not cruel. His eyes were different. Not cold like her masters, not filled with greed like the merchants. His eyes carried something she had not seen in years, anger but not directed at her, anger at the sight of her chains. For a moment she forgot to lower her head. Her eyes met his, just for a second, and in that second, something inside her stirred, something dangerous. Hope. The masters laughed, pouring drinks, speaking in loud voices. They talked about trade, about profit, about wars far away. She walked quietly, carrying a heavy tray. But she could feel his gaze following her, not with desire, not with command, but with pity. No. She shook her head quickly. That was impossible. Masters never pitied slaves. When she passed by him, he spoke softly, almost too low for others to hear. What is your name? Her hands froze. She almost dropped the tray. No one had asked her that in years. Even she barely remembered the sound of it. Her masters always called her girl or slave or by her number. She could not answer. If she spoke without permission, the punishment would be severe. But the human's eyes softened and he whispered again, "It's okay." Her heart pounded. She turned quickly and walked away before anyone noticed. But inside, her world had shifted. That night, lying on the cold floor of the slave quarters, she could not sleep. The question repeated in her mind. Why would he ask my name? It was such a simple thing. A name. A word that gave meaning to a life. And yet, it felt like fire burning inside her chest. She remembered the way he looked at her, like she was not invisible, like she was not property. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, but she also felt fear, because hope was dangerous. Hope could destroy her if it was false. And yet, she could not stop herself from wondering, who was this human? And why did he look at her as if she was more than a slave? That night, as the city slept under the twin suns, a new story quietly began. Her chains were still heavy, her master still cruel, but somewhere out there was a human who had seen her not as property, but as a person. And though she did not know it yet, that single moment would change everything. The encounter. The human stayed in the city longer than expected. At first, he was only a guest, a stranger walking through the markets and halls. But soon his presence became the subject of whispers, not just among slaves, but even among the masters. He was different. Everyone could see it, while other masters carried themselves. With arrogance and pride, this human carried himself with silence and thought. He did not shout. He did not laugh cruelly. He listened. And when his eyes rested on the slaves, there was no hunger for power. There was something else, something no one could explain. The girl, still nameless to her masters, saw him again, 2 days later. She was ordered to bring wine to the high chamber, where the human was meeting with the lords. Her steps were soft on the marble floor. Her tray shook slightly in her hands, though she forced herself to stay steady. She had learned long ago, never spill, never pause, never show fear. And yet when she entered the chamber, her heart betrayed her. It began to beat faster. The human sat among the lords, but he did not belong to them. His posture was calm, his hands steady, but his eyes, they carried a storm. He watched the lords speak as they bargained over trade routes and slaves as if they were coins or tools. When she approached the table, she felt his gaze fall on her again. This time, she did not dare look back. She kept her eyes low, placing the wine carefully on the table. But even without seeing, she could feel him watching her. It was as if his attention burned against the chains around her wrists. The lords laughed loudly. One of them waved at her without looking. "Pour for our guest." Her hands obeyed. She lifted the jug, filled the human's glass. And for just a second, her eyes flickered upward. Their gazes met. Her breath caught. The human's eyes were not cruel. They were not empty. They were sad. It was only a moment, then she lowered her head quickly. But that moment stayed inside her chest like a secret flame. The night grew late. The lords argued over prices, shouted about wars, boasted of their power. The human said little, only asking quiet questions. His voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge beneath it. Finally, one lord laughed harshly, slamming his cup down. "This is how things are done here, human. Slaves are born, slaves are owned. Do not waste your breath, it is the natural order." The human's jaw tightened. "Natural order?" he repeated softly. The lord sneered. "Yes, they are weaker, they serve. We rule, that is how the galaxy works." The human's hand curled into a fist against the table. For a moment, his silence was louder than any shout. Then he spoke, low and firm. "Where I come from," he said, "slavery is not natural, it is a crime." The room froze. The lords exchanged shocked glances, then laughter filled the air again. "A crime?" one scoffed. "Do not speak nonsense. These creatures live only because we allow it. They are property, nothing more." The girl stood in the corner, silent, invisible, but her ears caught every word. And for the first time in her life, she heard someone defend her existence. Her chest ached, though she did not know why. When the meeting ended, the lord stumbled away, drunk on both wine and pride. The human lingered, his expression dark. She gathered the empty cups, her hands moving quickly. She did not expect him to speak. Masters never spoke to her when others were not watching, but he did. "What is your name?" he asked again, softly. Her hands froze. She stared at the table. Afraid, the words died in her throat. He waited. His voice gentled. You don't have to tell me if you're afraid, but I want to know. You are not just a number. Her throat tightened. Her lips trembled. The sound of her own name, buried deep in memory, rose like a forgotten song. Lyra, she whispered at last. The human smiled, though there was sadness in it. Lyra, he repeated, as if the word was precious. Her eyes burned. No one had spoken her name in years. That night, Lyra lay awake again. The slave quarters were dark and filled with the sound of tired breathing. But her mind raced. The human had asked her name. He had spoken it aloud. He had treated it like it meant something. And for the first time she felt the faint edges of something dangerous, something that frightened her more than any master's whip. Hope. The next days only deepened the mystery. Whenever the human saw her, he did not treat her as invisible. If she brought water, he nodded in thanks. If she served food, he looked her in the eyes. Tiny actions, small gestures, but they meant more than any treasure. The other slaves noticed. Whispers spread again. Why? Does he look at her like that? Maybe he wants to own her. No. It's different, haven't you seen? He doesn't treat her like property. The whispers scared Lyra. Attention was dangerous. If the masters noticed, if they thought she was acting out of line, punishment would come. And yet, every time he looked at her, she felt stronger. One evening, when she was sent to bring him food, he stopped her with a quiet question. Do you want to be free? Her breath caught. The plate almost slipped from her hands. She stared at him, terrified. Don't say that, she whispered. If they hear, no one will hear, he said firmly. Her heart raced. She shook her head. It's impossible. Slaves do not become free. Not here. Not anywhere. The human's eyes sharpened. Impossible? No. Only dangerous, but dangerous is not the same as impossible. She stared at him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, Why? Why would you care? You don't even know me. The answer was simple. Because I do not need to know you to see that you are a person. Her hands trembled. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced them back. She did not understand him. She could not. And yet something inside her shifted. For the first time in her life, the world did not feel like a closed cage. Somewhere in some faraway place there might be a door. And though she was still chained, though fear still ruled her nights, one truth now echoed in her mind. There was at least one human in this galaxy who believed she deserved more. And that truth alone was enough to change everything. The first spark of freedom. The nights in the slave quarters were always the same, silent, heavy, hopeless. But since the human spoke to her, Lyra felt something different in the air. His words stayed inside her head like a song she could not forget. Because you are a person. She repeated them to herself in the dark. She whispered them inside her chest when no one could hear. For years she had been told she was property, an object, nothing more. But now, a single sentence had begun to break the chains inside her mind. And once the mind begins to break free, the body cannot stay chained forever. The human's visits to the city became more frequent. Every time he appeared in the halls, her heart quickened. Every time he spoke, the masters grew uneasy. He was not like them. He questioned their rules. He argued with their laws. When they spoke of profit, he spoke of justice. When they spoke of ownership, he spoke of rights. The lords laughed at him, calling him naive, calling him soft. But Lyra saw the fire in his eyes. He was not soft. He was steel. And that steel was aimed not at the weak, but at those who used power to crush others. One evening, something changed. The masters ordered Lyra to serve during a private gathering. The human was there, seated at the far end of the table. The lords boasted about their victories in the slave trade. about the thousands sold and bought as if they were nothing. Lyra poured wine with quiet hands, her face lowered. But inside, anger burned hotter than ever. Then a master slapped a young boy, no more than 12 years old, who had tripped while carrying food. The sound cracked across the hall. The boy fell to the floor, trembling, his eyes wide with terror. The masters laughed. "Clumsy beast," one sneered. But the human did not laugh. He stood suddenly, his chair scraping the floor. The laughter died at once. "Enough," the human said, his voice low but sharp. The hall went silent. All eyes turned to him. "Do you strike children for amusement?" he asked coldly. The lord who had hit the boy smirked. "He is property. I may strike him as I please." The human's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, kneeling beside the boy. He helped him up, his hands gentle, his eyes full of anger. Then he turned back to the lords. "Property?" he said. "No, he is a child, a person." The lords erupted in outrage. Voices shouted at once. "How dare you? Know your place, human. This is our law." But the human did not flinch. He stood tall, his presence filling the hall with defiance. And in that moment, something happened inside Lyra. She felt it, the spark. For years, she had been told she was nothing. But here was proof, living and breathing before her eyes, that not everyone believed that lie. The spark lit a fire in her chest, and though her chains still weighed heavy, she felt the first warmth of freedom. Later that night, when the hall was empty, the human found her again. She was scrubbing the floor, her hands raw from work, but when he knelt beside her, she froze. "You don't belong in chains," he said quietly. Her eyes darted around in fear. "Please," she whispered, "do not say that here. If they hear you, they will punish us both." "I don't care about punishment," he answered firmly. "I care about truth." She shook her head. "Truth does not matter in this city. Only power does." The human looked at her, his gaze steady. "Then we change the city. Or we escape it." Her breath caught. Escape? The word was dangerous, forbidden, impossible. And yet, hearing it from his mouth made her heart leap. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why do you care what happens to me?" "Because no one deserves chains," he said. "Not you, not that boy, not anyone." The next days were filled with tension. The lords began to distrust the human. They called him a troublemaker, an outsider who did not understand the order of things. But secretly he began to help. He spoke to Lyra in whispers, teaching her small things. Words from his language, ideas she had never heard before. "Freedom," he said one night, tracing the word in the dirt. "It means living by your own choice." She repeated it clumsily. "Free, Dom." He smiled. "Yes, and one day, you will live it." Her eyes watered. She had never dared to imagine such a thing. But freedom was dangerous. One evening, when she returned to the quarters, another slave pulled her aside. "Be careful," the woman hissed. "The masters are watching you. They say the human speaks to you too much. They say you are forgetting your place." Fear struck her heart. Punishment was coming. That night she could not sleep. She stared at the cracked ceiling, her chest heavy with dread. If the masters suspected her, they would make an example of her. But even in fear, the spark did not die. It grew. The next morning, she saw the human again. He noticed the fear in her eyes. "They know," she whispered. "They know you speak to me. They will hurt me. Please, stop." For a moment, pain flickered across his face. Then his voice hardened. "No," he said. "I will not stop. If they punish you, then they will face me." Her eyes widened. "You cannot fight them. They are many. They are powerful." He leaned closer, his voice low and steady. Power means nothing if it stands on lies, and slavery is the biggest lie of all. Her heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but fear still gripped her. Yet even fear could not kill the spark now. That night, something extraordinary happened. The human left a piece of cloth hidden where she would find it. Wrapped inside was bread, fresh, soft, more food than she had eaten in days. Her hands trembled as she held it. For years, food had been nothing but survival. But this was kindness. A gift. She ate slowly, tears filling her eyes. And for the first time, she felt not like a slave, but like a human being. As the city lights burned outside, as the masters slept in their towers, a silent revolution began in the heart of one girl. She was still chained. She was still beaten, still ordered, still trapped, but inside her chest a spark had been lit, and sparks, if given air, can grow into fire. She did not know it yet, but the fire of freedom had already begun, and it would not be contained. Escape and betrayal. The city of towers never slept. Ships roared through the skies, merchants shouted in the markets, and the lords drank and feasted in their golden halls. But beneath all the noise, deep inside the slave quarters, silence was heavy. Lyra sat in the corner, hugging her knees. Her body was tired from endless labor, but her mind refused to rest. The human's words replayed again and again. We change the city, or we escape it. Escape. The word burned in her chest like fire. Impossible, yes. Dangerous, yes. But once spoken, it refused to die. The human came again the next night. He waited in the shadows of the storage hall, where no lords would see. When Lyra arrived to fetch water, he stepped forward. Her breath caught. You should not be here. I had to see you, he said. His voice was low, steady. I cannot watch you suffer in silence any longer. She shook her head in fear. If they catch you, then let them catch me, he cut in firmly. I will not stay silent. For a moment she only stared at him. His eyes burned with something she had never seen in anyone before. Not pity, not guilt. Something stronger. Resolve. Then he whispered the words that would change her life. I can get you out. Her heart stopped. Out? She breathed. You mean escape? He nodded. There is a ship. Not far from here. I can take you. The world tilted around her. Escape? Freedom? No chains, no whips, no orders? It was a dream so big that her mind could barely hold it. But with the dream came fear. They will hunt us, she whispered. They will never stop. Then let them hunt, he said. But you will no longer be their slave. Her chest tightened. Hope and terror fought inside her. She wanted to say yes, but the fear of punishment clung to her like a shadow. He must have seen the doubt in her eyes because his voice softened. Lyra, he said, speaking her name like it was sacred. Chains are only strong if you believe in them. Stop believing. Her lips trembled. A tear slipped down her cheek. And at last, she nodded. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Too dangerous. The human told her to wait until the lords held their grand feast. With wine in their blood and laughter, in their throats they would not notice a missing slave. He would create a distraction. She would slip away. Together they would reach the hidden docks, where a small freighter waited, simple in words, deadly in action. The night came. The halls glittered with gold filled with music and laughter. The lords drank, their voices echoing through the palace. Lyra moved quietly through the room, carrying trays, serving wine, her face lowered. But inside, her heart pounded like a drum. Tonight was the night. She caught a glimpse of the human across the hall. He raised his glass, his expression calm, but his eyes flickered to her for just a second. It was enough. She slipped away. Step by step. Hall by hall. Her feet carried her toward the hidden passage the human had shown her. Freedom was only a breath away, but freedom is never given easily. As she neared the exit, a voice cut through the dark. "Where are you going?" She froze. A shadow stepped out from the corner. It was another slave, Tarek, a man she had known for years. His face was sharp with fear and anger. "You can't," he hissed. "If you run, they will punish all of us." Her chest tightened. "Tarek, please, come with us. We can escape together." But his eyes darted nervously. "No, I cannot. And I cannot let you go. If they find out, they will kill me. They will kill everyone." Lyra reached for him, desperate. "Then say nothing. Pretend you saw nothing." "But," Tarek shook his head, his voice broke. "I'm sorry, I have to tell them." Her heart shattered. Betrayal. Before she could stop him, he turned and ran down the hall. Panic surged inside her. If he warned the masters, everything would be lost. She ran too, her feet flying over stone floors. Behind her, voices began to rise, shouts, orders, the alarm they knew. The human appeared from the shadows, his eyes sharp with urgency. "They found out! Run!" Together they dashed through the corridors, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Guards shouted, footsteps thundered. The palace shook with the hunt. Lyra's lungs burned. Fear clawed at her chest. But the human grabbed her hand, pulling her forward. "Don't stop," he shouted. They burst into the outer halls where moonlight spilled across the ground. Ahead lay the docks, the last chance for freedom. But the guards were faster. They cornered them near the gates, weapons drawn, their voices sharp with rage. "There," one shouted. "The slave and the human, capture them." Lyra's heart sank. The walls closed in. The chains of her life were about to drag her back into darkness. But the human stepped in front of her, his body shielding hers. His voice rang out like thunder. "You will not take her," the guards laughed. "A human against us, you'll die here." "Then I die free," he answered. And then the fight began. The human moved like a storm. His fists struck with the force of fury, his movements sharp and quick. Guards fell one by one, their weapons clattering to the ground. Lyra watched in shock, her breath frozen. She had seen violence before, but never like this. His was not the cruelty of the lords. It was the rage of a man who fought for something greater than himself for her. But they were many, and he was only one. His body bled, his breath grew heavy, yet he did not stop. "Run!" he shouted to her. "Go to the ship." "I can't leave you," she cried. "Yes, you can," he said, his voice fierce. "Freedom is not mine, it's yours. Take it." Her tears blurred her vision, but she turned and ran, her feet pounding, toward the docks. Behind her she heard the clash of metal, the cries of battle, the roar of defiance. But just as the ship came into view, strong hands grabbed her. She screamed, kicking, but the guards dragged her back, their laughter cruel. "Did you think you could escape, little slave?" One snarled. She struggled, but her strength was nothing against them. They pulled her back toward the palace, her dream of freedom shattering with every step. And in that moment she realized the cruelest truth of all. Hope could lift you higher than the stars, but betrayal could drag you deeper than chains. The human's voice still echoed in her ears as they dragged her away. "You don't belong in chains." But the chains closed around her wrists again, and in the dark halls of the palace her spark of freedom flickered, trembling in the storm of betrayal. The fight for survival. Chains clattered. Lyra stumbled as the guards dragged her back into the cold stone halls of the palace. Her wrists bled against the iron cuffs, but she did not cry. Not this time. Her mind burned with a single thought. He is still fighting. She could hear the sounds in the distance. Shouts, weapons clashing, boots striking stone. The human had not surrendered. Even wounded, even outnumbered, he fought like a storm against the tide. For her, and that truth gave her strength, even as the guards shoved her to the floor. They threw her into a holding cell, a dark place of stone and iron, meant for slaves who disobeyed. The door slammed shut, the lock echoing with finality. One of the guards sneered through the bars. You thought you could escape, little slave? You and your foolish human? He will die tonight, and you will live to see it. Lyra's chest ached, but she lifted her chin. Something had changed inside her. She was no longer the silent girl who accepted every order. If he dies, she whispered, her voice steady, then his spirit will still be freer than you will ever be. The guard snarled, but her words followed him even as he walked away. The hours dragged. The walls felt heavy, pressing in on her. Fear clawed at her chest, whispering that it was over, that the masters had won, that freedom was nothing more than a cruel dream. But then footsteps. Heavy, quick, urgent. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and there he was. The human stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his clothes torn, his skin streaked with blood. His eyes burned with exhaustion, but also with unbroken fire. Lyra, he said, his voice rough but strong. We're not finished yet. Her breath caught. Tears blurred her vision. She stumbled forward, and he caught her in his arms. His grip firm, protective. You came back, she whispered. I promised, he said simply. But their time was short. Behind them, shouts rang out. The guards had discovered his escape. The human pulled her by the hand. We move now. No more hiding. Together they ran through the halls, their footsteps echoing. Alarms blared. Guards poured in from every side. This was no longer just escape. This was war. At the first corner, 3 guards blocked their path. Weapons raised, they sneered. End of the line, human. But the human did not hesitate. He surged forward, fists striking like thunder. One guard fell with a broken jaw, another with a shattered knee. The third lunged with a blade, but Lyra for the first time did not cower. She grabbed a fallen staff, swinging it with all her strength. The weapon cracked against the guard's arm, forcing him back. Her breath shook, but her eyes blazed. The human glanced at her, surprised. Then he grinned. That's it. You fight too. They pressed forward. Every corridor was a battlefield. Guards came from all sides, their weapons gleaming in the torchlight. But the human fought with the ferocity of a soldier who had nothing left to lose. Every strike was for her. Every blow was for freedom. And though Lyra had never held a weapon before, she found strength in the fire burning inside her. She blocked strikes, shoved enemies, bought him moments to breathe. Together they were no longer a master and a slave. They were survivors side by side. At last they stumbled into the outer hall, where the night sky poured through broken arches. The city stretched before them, towers gleaming under the twin moons. The docks were still far, but closer than they had ever been. The human's breath came heavy, his body trembling with wounds. Blood dripped from his side, staining his shirt. You're hurt, Lyra whispered, panic in her voice. He shook his head. I'll survive. We both will. Keep moving. But even as he said it, his steps faltered. They found brief shelter in an abandoned storage chamber. Lyra pushed him down onto a crate, her hand shaking as she tore a strip from her dress to press against his wound. You can't keep fighting like this, she whispered, her eyes wet. His hand caught hers, firm and warm despite the blood. Listen to me, Lyra. You are not a slave anymore, do you hear me? Not anymore. Her lips trembled. But the chains are nothing, he said fiercely. You broke them the moment you believed you could. The words struck her deeper than any blade. She felt it, the truth of them. The spark inside her was no longer small. It was fire now, roaring, unstoppable. The shouts grew louder outside. The guards were closing in. The human struggled to his feet, pain etched across his face, but his resolve unbroken. They'll come through that door any second. When they do, we fight together. Lyra gripped the staff tighter. Her fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. They will not take me back, she said, her voice steady. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was no slave and no rescuer. only two souls standing against the world. The door crashed open, guards flooded in, blades flashing, voices shouting. The human roared and charged, his fist slamming into the first soldier. Lyra spun her staff, striking another across the head. The chamber filled with chaos, metal against flesh, shouts against silence, fury against fear. The fight was desperate. The human's strength began to falter under the weight of his wounds, but he refused to fall. Every time he stumbled, Lyra was there, striking, blocking, holding the line beside him. She was no longer the girl who bowed her head. She was no longer the nameless slave. She was Lyra, and she was free. The last guard fell with a cry, crashing to the floor. The chamber fell silent except for their ragged breathing. Lyra stood trembling, her staff slick with sweat. The human leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, blood soaking his shirt. But they were alive. They had survived. Outside, the city still burned with danger. More guards would come. The lords would not stop. The galaxy itself seemed to stand against them. But in that moment, something greater bound them together. Not chains, not fear, but trust. Lyra knelt beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "We can't stay here, we have to reach the ship." He met her eyes, his voice weak but steady. "Then we go, no matter what waits for us." And together, they rose again, side by side. Not slave and master, but equals. Far in the distance, the docks waited. Beyond them, the stars. And though the road ahead was filled with danger, one truth burned brighter than ever. They were no longer running to escape. They were fighting to live. And the fight had only just begun. A new bond. The night sky stretched, wide above them, filled with the glow of twin moons and the silver trails of ships. The docks were still far, but every step carried them closer to freedom. Lyra's hands shook as she gripped the staff, her body trembling with exhaustion. But her spirit burned brighter than ever. She was no longer walking as a slave dragged by chains. She was walking beside him, beside the human who had risked everything for her. They found shelter in an abandoned maintenance tunnel beneath the city. The walls dripped with water, the air damp and heavy. Here, for a short moment, there was silence. The human lowered himself against the wall, his breath ragged. Blood still soaked his side, the wound deep and angry. Lyra rushed to him, panic in her eyes. "You're hurt," she whispered, kneeling beside him. "I'll live," he said, though his face was pale. She pressed her hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding with another strip torn from her dress. "You cannot keep fighting like this. You'll die before we reach the ship." His hand caught hers, firm despite his weakness. "No, I promised you freedom. I will not die until I've kept that promise." Her chest tightened. His voice carried no doubt, no fear, only certainty. And for the first time in her life, she realized he was not just fighting for her. He was fighting with her. The tunnel was quiet, save for the drip of water. Lyra sat beside him, her knees pulled close, her eyes watching the dark. After a long silence, she spoke. "Why? Why me?" The human turned his head toward her, his eyes heavy but warm. "What do you mean?" She swallowed. "Out of all the slaves, out of all the people in chains, why did you choose me?" He studied her for a moment as though searching for the right words. Finally, he said, "Because when I saw you, I didn't see a slave. I saw someone who still had fire in her eyes, someone who hadn't given up." Her breath caught. She shook her head. "I wanted to give up so many times, but you didn't," he said. "And that matters." Tears stung her eyes. She lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "No one has ever seen me like that. Not since I was taken." He reached out, his fingers brushing lightly against her wrist. "Then let me be the first. You are not property. You are not a number. You are Lyra. And that means something." Her heart ached at the sound of her name on his lips. Soft, gentle, precious, as if it was worth more than gold. Hours passed. The night grew colder. Lyra leaned against the wall, her head heavy with exhaustion. The human rested beside her, his body battered but unbroken. In the silence, she spoke again, her voice quiet. When I was a child before they took me, I dreamed of the stars. I thought one day I would fly among them. But when I was chained, I stopped dreaming. I thought the stars were only for others. He turned to her, his voice steady. The stars are for you too, Lyra. They belong to no one. And soon, you will see them as you once dreamed. Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly that her chest hurt. Do you really think we can make it? She asked. He smiled faintly despite the blood on his face. We already have, because you are no longer afraid. The bond between them grew in the silence of that tunnel, not through grand speeches or promises, but through shared pain, shared hope, and shared defiance. When dawn began to break, Lyra stirred. We must move. They will be searching. He struggled to his feet, his body weak, but his spirit unshaken. Then we moved together. She offered her shoulder, steadying him as they walked. He leaned against her, not as a master leaning on a servant, but as a man trusting another soul. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt equal. They reached the edge of the industrial district, where smoke poured from tall chimneys and workers moved like shadows. The masters rarely patrolled here, but their influence was everywhere. The human guided her through narrow alleys, avoiding the eyes of strangers. Yet no matter how careful they were, the danger never left. Every sound, every shadow, every distant voice felt like a threat. Still, Lyra walked with her head higher than before. Fear still lived inside her, but it no longer ruled her. By midday, they found another hiding place, a ruined workshop abandoned long ago. Dust covered the floors, and broken machines lay scattered like bones. The human collapsed onto a crate, his body trembling. Lyra hurried to his side. You need rest, she said firmly. He shook his head. No rest. Not yet. We're too close. You'll collapse if you keep pushing, she insisted. For the first time, his voice softened in surrender. Then, just for a moment, she helped him lie down, his head resting against her lap. He closed his eyes, his breathing uneven. Lyra stroked his hair gently, her chest tight with emotions she could not name. She had never touched someone like this before, never cared for someone without fear, never been trusted to hold another life in her hands, and in that fragile moment she realized the truth. She was no longer fighting for herself alone. She was fighting for him too. As he slept, she whispered softly, almost to herself. You freed me, but you also gave me something else. You gave me a reason to live. Her voice trembled with the weight of it. I will not let them take you from me. Not now. Not ever. The hours passed slowly. Outside, the city stirred with noise, but inside the workshop, there was only quiet. When the human woke, his eyes met hers. You stayed, he murmured. Always, she said. He smiled faintly, and for the first time since she had known him, it was not a smile of defiance or pity. It was a smile of trust. A bond had been formed in fire and blood, and nothing could break it. As evening fell, they prepared to move again. The docks were closer now, only a few districts away. The ship waited, silent and hidden like a promise, but the masters were not finished. Word of their escape spread like wildfire. Patrols doubled. Rewards were offered. The hunt was relentless. Yet as Lyra tightened her grip on the staff and the human steadied his blade, fear no longer filled her heart. They were hunted, yes, but they were not alone. They had each other. And so, as the stars began to glow above the city, a new bond carried them forward. Not chains, not fear, not survival, alone, but something far greater. Something that could not be bought, beaten, or broken. Love. From slave to wife. The city blazed with noise as the hunt continued. Alarms echoed across the towers, patrols filled the streets, and the lords shouted their fury from gilded balconies. To lose one slave was shame enough. To lose her, to a human, was unforgivable. But deep in the shadows, Lyra and the human kept moving. Every step carried them closer to the hidden docks. Every heartbeat carried them closer to freedom. The night was heavy, filled with danger. Yet for the first time, Lyra's chest carried more than fear. It carried hope and something deeper. Something she had never dared to feel before. The last chase. The docks loomed ahead, silver platforms stretching above the Black Sea. Ships rested like sleeping beasts, their lights flickering in the dark. And there, hidden at the far end, waited the freighter, their one chance to leave the city behind. But the lords had prepared for this. Guards swarmed the docks, their weapons gleaming, their voices sharp. There, one shouted, spotting them. The chase began. Lyra ran beside the human, her lungs burning, her staff clutched tight. Behind them, boots thundered and weapons fired. Bolts of light struck the metal around them, sparks flying. The human's hand gripped, hers, pulling her forward. "Don't stop," he shouted. "I won't," she cried back, her voice fierce. They dodged between crates, leapt across narrow bridges, and ducked under fire. The guards closed in, their numbers endless, and yet, step by step, the freighter drew nearer. The stand at last, they reached the final platform. The ship loomed above, its ramp half lowered, ready for launch, but a wall of guards blocked their path. Dozens of them, armored and armed, their faces twisted with rage. The human slowed, pulling Lyra behind him. His breath came heavy, his wounds bleeding, but his eyes burned with unbroken fire. "This is it," he said quietly. "We make our stand here." Lyra's heart pounded. She gripped her staff, her fear drowned by resolve. "Then we fight together." The guards charged. The human roared, surging forward like a storm. His fists struck like thunder, his blade flashing in the moonlight. Guards fell one by one, their cries lost in the chaos. Beside him, Lyra fought with all her strength. She blocked strikes, swung her staff, and moved with the fire of someone who had nothing left to lose. Every strike she made was for her stolen childhood, for her stolen name, for every slave who had ever been told they were nothing. The battle raged, blood spilled, metal clashed, and through it all, they stood side by side, two souls against an army. The breaking point, but no battle lasts forever. The human staggered, his wounds too deep, his strength fading. A blade cut across his arm, another across his chest. He fell to one knee, his breath ragged. "No!" Lyra screamed, striking the attacker away. She knelt beside him, her tears mixing with blood. "You can't fall now," she whispered, desperate. "We're so close." His hand found hers, squeezing weakly. His eyes met hers, still burning even through pain. "Lyra, you are free. Even if I die, remember that." Her tears fell, but anger blazed in her chest. She turned to the guards, her voice breaking into a scream. "You will not take him from me." And in that moment, something inside her shattered. The fear, the chains, the years of silence, gone. She fought with a fury she had never known. Her staff struck like lightning. Her movements fueled not by survival but by love. The guards stumbled back, shocked by the storm that rose from a girl they had once called property. The escape through the chaos, a chance opened, a narrow path to the ship's ramp. Lyra pulled the human to his feet, his arm over her shoulder. "We're leaving," she said fiercely. Together they stumbled up the ramp, the ship's systems whirred to life, engines glowing with power. The guards shouted, firing wildly, but the freighter's hull closed around them, sealing them away. Engines roared. The ship lifted, breaking free from the dock, rising into the night sky. Lyra collapsed beside the human, her chest heaving, her tears streaming. For the first time, The chains were not on her wrists. They were broken, left behind in the city. Below, they were free. The New World days passed as the freighter sailed through the stars. Lyra tended to the human's wounds, watching him slowly regain strength. She sat by his side, feeding him, cleaning his injuries, whispering words she had never dared to speak. "You saved me," she told him. He shook his head weakly. "No. We saved each other." Her heart ached at his words. She realized he was right. She was no longer the girl waiting for rescue. She was the woman who had chosen to fight, and in that choice, she had found herself again. The colony at last. The freighter reached its destination, a human colony on the edge of the galaxy. The settlement was small but alive, filled with laughter, music, and freedom. No chains, no lords, no slaves. When Lyra stepped off the ship, her knees nearly buckled. For the first time, her feet touched soil not owned by masters. The air tasted different. The sky stretched wide, open, endless. She was free, truly free. Tears spilled down her cheeks. The human stood beside her, his hand steady on her shoulder. "Welcome, home," he said softly. The promised days turned into weeks. Lyra learned what freedom meant, step by step. She worked, she laughed, she spoke her name proudly. But through it all, the human was there. He taught her, guided her, and most of all, treated her not as property, not even just as a friend, but as an equal. One evening, as the sun set over the colony, painting the sky with gold, he stood before her. His wounds had healed, his strength returned, but his eyes were soft with something deeper. "Lyra," he said quietly, "I freed you because I could not watch someone live in chains. But somewhere along the way, I realized something else." She tilted her head, her chest tightening. "What?" He took her hands gently in his. "I don't just want you to be free. I want you to be with me, as my equal, as my partner, as my wife." Her breath caught. The world spun around her. For years she had been told she was nothing. For years she had been treated as less than human. And now, here was a man asking her to stand beside him. Not as property, not as servant, but as his wife. Tears filled her eyes. She nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." From slave to wife. The colony gathered days later for the simple ceremony. There were no chains, no masters, no cruel laughter. Only friends, neighbors, and the stars above. Lyra walked forward, her head high, her heart full. She was not the nameless slave of the palace. She was not the girl who bowed in silence. She was Lyra. Free. Loved. Whole. When the vows were spoken, and his hands held hers, she felt the final chain fall away. She was his wife, and he was her husband. The future that night, as they stood together beneath the endless stars, she leaned against him, her voice soft. "Do you think they will come for us?" "They may," he said. "But let them come. We will face them, together." She smiled, her eyes shining. Together. And for the first time she believed it. Not just in survival, not just in freedom, but in love, strong enough to fight the whole galaxy.